So good morning, class. We're going to be talking about types of fruits. Now, a lot of these fruits you're very familiar with. Some of them are uh, unique to different cultures. Certainly, you have fruits that you use all the time that aren't common to the rest of the world. We're going to talk about the most common fruit and then some of the exotic fruits, things that are also kind of are considered both fruit and vegetables at the same time. Technically, vegetables, meaning that they have certain characteristics that make them vegetables, but then they're also, but they're mainly considered a fruit. So we're going to go into basic fruit classifications. We're going to go into berries. We're going to go into aggregate fruits, grapes, palms, drupes, melons, citrus fruits, tropical fruits, exotic fruits, and fruits, and then again, fruit vegetables. So obviously, everybody's familiar with strawberries. Strawberries are covered with tiny seeds. You will see me look away a little bit because I'm going to talk a little bit about, um, I'm going to actually look at some of my notes to make sure that I cover everything that I want to cover. One of the things that I want you to do after this is there is an actual quiz, but you can use this PowerPoint while you're taking the quiz. Please note that there is a time limit to the quiz. So the time limit is going to be set at 90 minutes. That's an hour and a half, but there's quite a few questions that you need to answer, and that will be, so when you start the quiz, you have 90 minutes to actually take it, but you can use any notes. That's not always going to be the case that I want you to use the notes, but in this case, there's so much different information that it's kind of hard to remember everything and memorize everything. So this is more of a worksheet than a quiz. It's going to be counted as a quiz, but both assignments and quiz and tests on your syllabus count the same, so it really doesn't matter. I just want to let you know that. One of the things that you should know about strawberries is that they mold very easily. So we want to keep them relatively dry, but we want the environment around it to be moist. In other words, we want to have a nice, cool, moist area so that they don't shrivel and shrink. But then we also want to make sure that they're not wet. The individual berries are wet, because when they become wet, they actually develop a mold, and that mold can spread onto other berries. So, and this goes with any kinds of berries. So you'll notice that some of the berries that are bought, at least in the United States, have like a little pad inside, a little pad in the container, and that pad absorbs some of the moisture so that the berries can stay dry. So your environment wants to be relatively humid and cold so that they don't develop these organisms easily, and that they will be preserved for a greater amount of time. But then they don't have the tendency to start to grow mold on the outside. Usually it's kind of a fuzzy white mold that grows, and then that will spread to other berries. And we have blueberries. Now, the interesting thing about blueberries is that we have both wild and cultivated. So whenever we talk about something that's cultivated, that means that's something that a farmer actually grew, that they're raised on a farm, or they're grown on a farm, and that's cultivated. Versus a wild blueberry could possibly be cultivated, meaning that I'm sure they grow wild blueberries on farms, or in that they're picked, but they actually were originally found in the wild. And so you can take a wild blueberry bush and grow them on a farm, but they're considered a wild blueberry because that was their origin. And a wild blueberry is a lot smaller. The berries are very tiny. And they can be very sweet versus the cultivated ones, which are much, much larger, probably about 10 times, each berry is about 10 times the size of an individual wild blueberry. We also have cranberries, and cranberries are something that are not really are native to New England. So in New England, we produce cranberries. There's also in the Midwest and Wisconsin. So in the cooler areas, we have what they call cranberry bogs. Cranberry bogs are wide areas that actually can hold water, and the cranberry bushes are kept dry while they're grown. But then during the excuse me, during the fall, when the cranberries are ripe, they flood the bogs. They actually fill these areas up with water, kind of like a pond or a swamp, and they fill it up with water, and they actually have a machine that shakes the bushes that have the cranberries. Cranberries are lighter than water, so the cranberries float to the top of the water, and then they gather up the cranberries. And they actually leave the water there over the winter time, and the water freezes. And what that does is it actually helps protect the cranberry bushes during the bitter winters of New England and the upper Midwest. So it's really kind of interesting. Cranberries are extraordinarily tart, so it usually requires a lot of sugar to help, make them edible. They're used in things like cranberry juice. They have a lot of antioxidants, and they have a lot of vitamin C. So they actually are very good for your body and cleaning things out and getting you, actually helping your system run better. So they're very good for that. Very tart. We use it at cranberry sauce for, they're good with meats and chicken and poultry. So at Thanksgiving, when we're serving our turkey meal, it's very common to have cranberry sauce served with the turkey. Gooseberries are kind of interesting, and I'm just going to move down to my notes here so I know what I want to say here. So a gooseberry is a smooth skin berry that can be green, golden, red, purple, or white. It has many tiny seeds on the inside. Gooseberries are used to make a classic English dessert called a fool. I've never actually made this, but which is pureed gooseberries mixed with sweetened whipped cream. There's also used in jams, jellies, and chutneys. Now, the thing about gooseberries, kind of like a tomatillo, they have a skin around them. You have to squeeze them. Not quite as rough as a tomatillo, not papery, but they're usually used in jams and jellies because getting them fresh is pretty hard. Some fruits, I shouldn't say a lot of fruits, but some fruits don't travel very well. And so the reason why we see some fruits only in different areas of the world is because they don't transport well and they don't hold very well. When you think about anything that is picked, it may be 48, 72 hours or longer before that fruit actually gets to the store. And so they have to actually hold up, and then they need to hold up for at least a week beyond that so that once the customer buys it, then it'll actually be good for a few days inside the customer's home, inside the person's home who has just purchased the fruit. So a lot of these things are preserved, and they're preserved in a few ways, that certainly in jams and jellies, and then chutneys and other types of things where they're actually canned. So gooseberries are often canned or put in a jar, and so that makes it possible for these things to last longer. Some things, especially during the winter time when it's difficult to get things, they're frozen. So we have things like frozen strawberries, frozen blueberries, those kinds of things. Currants are kind of interesting, and currants is another thing that is a preserved often. Very hard to find fresh currants. Currants are often dried. And so what we usually have is, let me just get to my notes real quick here. Usually they're red or black or golden. They're used in jams and jellies. That's another way. So you can have a currant jelly. Dry currants used in baking are most often Zante currants. And so Zante currants are actually not a currant at all, but actually a dried form, kind of like a raisin of a seedless grape. So sometimes things are called things that aren't really truly that originate from the actual thing that it's named after. So a dried currant isn't always a currant. A lot of times it is just a dried grape. And so hard to find currants in the fresh form. Again, they're very delicate. And so normally you would find it as a jam or a jelly. Blackberries, raspberries, and loganberries and boysenberries. That's an interesting. So blackberry is a sweet dark purple. It's an aggregate fruit that grows on a bramble bush. So it actually grows on a bush, and it's an aggregate fruit. So when you think of aggregate fruits, that's what we're talking about. Raspberry is slightly tart red fruit and grows in clusters, also on a bush. A loganberry is a red-purple hybrid, and the hybrid is a cross between two berries. And in the case of loganberries, they are a cross between a raspberry and a blackberry. And a boysenberry is a cross between a raspberry, a blackberry, and a loganberry. So now you have two original berries, the blackberry and raspberry. You have a hybrid. You mix those three together, and you have a boysenberry. Now, I'm not a big fan of blackberries because they have a lot of tiny seeds, hard seeds, but I really like raspberries. Boysenberries are very nice, and even loganberries. Loganberries are extremely hard to find. In fact, I rarely see them, but usually blackberries, raspberries, and even boysenberries are relatively easy to find. So then we have grapes. They're an oval fruit, and whoops, let me just go back real quick here. Oh, I just went by it. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm still trying to learn. I'm going to talk about different types of grapes because I can't seem to move my back to it. But a grape is an oval fruit. Obviously, most of you are familiar with grapes, but there are three main types that are used, that are sold, especially in the United States. One is the Concord grape, the other one is the red flame grape, and the other one is the Thompson. Both the Thompson and the red flame are seedless, and Concord grape has seeds in it. So actually, most people like when they're using grapes for snacking, like the seedless grapes. And so seedless grapes have become extraordinarily popular over the last few decades because of the ability to be able to eat them and not have those tiny seeds get caught in your teeth. A palm or pomme is a fleshy fruit that contains a core of seeds and an edible peel. Apples, pears, quinces, and palms are palms. So the quinces, we're going to go over that. So we have different types of those, and we're going to go over the different types of palms that they have. You will see that there are different types of apples. And by the way, my picture is in front of some of these things, but I'm actually going to load the whole presentation into the file section of your Canvas. And so in the files section, what you'll see is this presentation without me talking. So you'll be able to watch this as a video, but then also see it in the file section. The quiz is actually in the quiz section of your Canvas page. So when you go into your class, simply scroll down and you will see files just as you did before when you were taking classes, but you also see a thing called Studio, and Studio is where you'll find all your videos. So we have just a ton of different types of apples. Now there's a few ones that are used more popularly. You should know that if they are green or very tart, they work well in baking. And if they are more, if they're redder and sweeter, they are good for eating. The sweeter they are and the more ripe they look, meaning ripe that they don't have that green look, although there's some that are even at a ripe stage are green, such as in the Granny Smith or the Golden Delicious or the Crispin. These are apples that the redder ones do not bake very well. They kind of get mushy. So they would be good if you were to cook them. They'd be good for applesauce, but not good for like an apple pie. So all different things for apples. Apples are probably one of the #1 fruits in the United States. They also hold up for a very long time. They can hold up for a good long time without refrigeration, and even a longer time with refrigeration. So there's also a lot of different types of pears, and pears are also available during the winter time because they hold up very well and they store very well. Some of the main pears are the Anjou, the Asian, the Bartlett, the Bosque, and then there's a couple other ones called the Comus and the Sackle. You don't usually find the Comus or the Sackle, or the Seckle rather, available, but they are also used kind of in the same way that that apples are. They're not quite as popular as apples, but they are something that people really enjoy. So quinces are hard yellow palms that grow in warm climates, and I'm just going to move on down here. So a quince is a hard yellow palm that grows in warm climates. As I said, quinces are not eaten raw because they have a bitter taste. This characteristic disappears during cooking. Quinces are typically cooked in sugar syrup, which turns the fruit slightly darker, pinkish tint. Quinces are often used in jams and jellies. So this again is preserved. It's kind of a bitter flavor. It has to be added sugar to it, but it's very tasty in jams and jellies. We then have peaches, nectarines, and apricots, and they're known as drupes, D-R-U-P-E, drupe. They are a stone fruit because they actually have a very hard inner core stone. That's actually their seed, and it's actually called a pit. So a pit is not, there's some fruits that have multiple seeds. Saying like a papaya has all these multiple seeds, whereas apricots, nectarines, and peaches have this one seed, and it's right in the middle. These pits or seeds have to be removed before the fruit is eaten, unless you're eating it whole, and then you just eat around it. Avocados are something that is very familiar, especially in the central and South American regions, grown in all kinds of places, but they have to be grown in semi-tropical or tropical locations. Avocados grow very well in California, which is not is more of an arid. So most of the areas in California are desert or dry areas, but avocados work very well in these long sunny days. They do require quite a bit of water to grow them. There's also larger avocados, which we call California avocados, they are actually green on the outside and several times larger than a typical avocado like what you see here, which is more of what we consider a Mexican or Central American avocado. They also have um, a pit in them or a big seed, as you know. And so this just kind of shows you how to remove that seed. Just taking the knife and you cut around that big seed, that big pit, and then you stab the pit with the heel of the knife, and then you turn and you can take that seed or pit out. Um, it's just one way to do it. It's easier to get that out, just to kind of loosen that pit. So that's how a lot of people do it. Dates are grown on a date palm tree. And again, I'm just going to get to my notes real quick here. Let me just see if I talk about let's see here. So date is a plump, juicy, and meaty drupe that grows on date palm trees. Dates are high in dietary fiber. They also have good carbohydrates, contain more potassium than bananas. They are also low in fat, cholesterol, and sodium. In addition to being eaten fresh, dates may be dried or stuffed with savory or sweet fillings after the pit has been removed. So there's actually we've actually taken dates and stuffed them with cream cheese, and it's used as an appetizer. So they're very sweet, and they work really nicely for that purpose. So plum is an oval drupe that comes in a variety of colors. Plum is an oval-shaped drupe that grows on trees in warm climates and contains a variety of colors such as blue, purple, red, yellow, or green. There are more than 2,000 varieties of plums. That's something I didn't know. Some types of plums are sweet, juicy, and fragrant, while others can be sour, crisp, or mealy. Flesh can be red, orange, yellow, or green-yellow. A damson plum is a blue-skinned plum with an acidic tart flavor used to make jams, jellies, and preserves. A Japanese plum is slightly heart-shaped plum with a crimson to green, yellow, or purple to green-yellow skin. Sweet, juicy flesh is pale green or golden yellow in color. And plums can be eaten raw or baked in cobblers and touch. Dried plums are known as prunes. So when we dry them, they're actually called prunes. Almost look like a date or a fig, a dried fig. They're very large and got a lot of fiber in them. So a cherry has a long, thin stem that holds it on the tree. It is also a drupe. It grows in clusters. The skin of cherries typically ranges in color from a bright red to a deep red that is nearly black. So we have things called the Bing cherry, much darker in color. Flesh of cherry is pulpy and juicy and ranges in color from a dark yellow orange to a deep reddish black. There's golden skin varieties as well, so they come in a variety. You might actually see them in drinks. If they're used in a drink like a maraschino cherry, they're actually cooked in sugar water, and so that sugar water actually causes the cherry to turn into something that tastes almost like candy. Okay, that's a cherry pitter, actually takes away the seed. We also have all kinds of olives, and there's not enough time to actually talk about all the different types of olives that there are. But there is our trees are grown on trees. We have a dark brown to black. Obviously, you can make olive oil. There's all different types of olive oils. We're actually going to go into some of the oils when we get into more of that, and so you'll see all the different types of those, and we're going to have some time just to talk about different types of olive oils and different types of oils. There are also olives are brined or salt cured and then packed in olive oil or vinegar. Then there's black olives. They're known as mission olives. Um, and we have a Greek Kalamata olives and French Niçoise are also popular varieties. They're both pitted and unpitted, and used both raw and in cooked dishes. A lot of olives are preserved because the olives that are not turned into olive oil are preserved in jars or in cans. This is because olives, again, don't travel well, and so they're often preserved in some kind of olive oil or in some type of um, citric water or something of that nation. By citric water, I mean something that actually has a preservative in it. So that's how olives are transported. So sometimes, unless you live in an area, you're not going to get fresh olives very often. I live in the area where they're grown. We also have, and my picture is going to cover this, but we have cantaloupes, and we also have musk melons. You might not be familiar with musk melons. For us in the United States, musk melons only come out during the summertime, late summer, um, sometimes early fall, and but they taste a lot like cantaloupe. We're going to move this along a little bit faster because we're kind of up for time. And then we have what they call a canary melon, a watermelon, and a honeydew melon. Um, And honeydew melon is a melon with a smooth outer rind that changes from pale green color to a creamy yellow. Canary melon is fairly large canary yellow melon with a smooth rind that is slightly waxy when ripe. And obviously we know a watermelon. I'm not sure in Brazil or Chile if you have watermelons. I would presume you do, but I don't know. But they both have a seeded variety and seedless. Now the seedless still have tiny little seeds in them, but they're virtually without seeds, and so we don't have to spit out the seeds as we're eating them. We can just eat them with the seeds in there. We also have cassava melons and Crenshaw melons. So they are different types of melons. Um, then get into oranges. Obviously, oranges are something that everybody is familiar with, but there's so many different varieties of oranges, and oranges are grown almost everywhere. In the United States, we have oranges grown a lot in Florida, but we've actually had an issue with this one little worm that is getting into the orange groves and has decimated a lot of the orange groves in Florida. So a great percentage of orange groves have actually gone out of business because of this type of worm that has actually caused the orange trees to die. We then have blood oranges, and they're very interesting. You won't find them often. They're smaller than Valencia. They have navel varieties and they have a deep red flesh, often used to make beautifully colored sauces and to add color to salads. So they look really pretty. Then we have mandarins and tangerines. Okay. Now they're easier to separate. They're easier to peel. People like them. They don't have quite as much pith. That's that white part that's right under the rind of the orange, and so they're easy eating. We actually have really small types of tangerines that are sold for children because they're very easy to eat, easy to peel. Obviously, everybody's familiar with lemons and limes. Okay, limes are actually used more in Central America, and lemons are more popular in the United States. Not to say that you can't find lemons everywhere, but limes are used much more, say in a guacamole and other types of applications where that citrus, that tart is needed. Limes aren't particularly are much different, in my opinion, to flavor than lemons. Lemons have a different flavor that's hard to describe. You actually have to taste them to know the difference. There is a type of melon called a Meyer lemon. It's a cross between a lemon and an orange. And then there's also a thing called key limes. And so key limes are very small little limes. And we make it, there's a place in Florida, key lime, or that's a place where these limes are known for. And they actually make a thing called key lime pie, which is a thickened, what they make is kind of a custard. And then they add this lime juice to it, and they make it into a key lime pie, which is a custard pie. Does not have a top to it, usually has a graham cracker crust to it. So you might want to look up key lime pie. It's very delicious. So you could try to make a clean key lime pie. Zesting is the process of removing the thin colored peel of the citrus. One of the things that we have to be careful with the zest is not to get that white pith, because that'll actually make things bitter. So whenever we use a zest, we should use a zester, which is right here. And those zesters actually help just get the yellow or the green portion of the citrus or the orange. We can zest orange, we can zest limes. Anything that's citrus is very good for zesting. Sorry, got a little tickle in my throat. We also have grapefruits. I don't know how popular grapefruits are in other parts of the country. They're pretty popular here. They have a kind of a tart to kind of slightly bitter flavor. Some people think that they taste really, really sweet. I always found that they kind of taste really tart to bitter to me, and I don't really particularly like the flavor personally. But they are very popular, and they're actually used in many of the applications that oranges would be used in. A very popular part is grapefruit juice. They are, also at certain times of the year, you can get them in gift baskets. And so one of the popular things is you'll get oranges and grapefruits. Sometimes around Christmas time, it's still warm in Florida. And so a lot of these baskets are put together and sold as Christmas baskets, because people want to have citrus year round. Excuse me. Ugly fruit is a large teardrop-shaped seedless citrus fruit, similar in size to a grapefruit. Tastes kind of like a grapefruit, I guess, in my opinion. It's a little sweeter than a grapefruit. The peel is very lumpy. I think it's easier to peel. And an ugly fruit is a hybrid. It's actually a hybrid made by crossbreeding grapefruit and a tangerine. And it's actually available from December through April. I've never seen it actually can be juice. I've never seen it used where you can actually buy the juice. But you could juice it yourself and use it in like dressings and things like that. One of the things that, and again, my picture is probably covering this a little bit, but one of the things that you'll see is how to actually make these citrus supreme sections. And so it's just a process. And so I'd like you to look at that, how to actually make those supremes, which are sections of the orange that do not have the pith on them. Obviously, a lot of you are familiar, everybody's familiar with bananas and plantains. One of the things that we do with plantains is this, if they're very dark, almost black, they're much sweeter. As they look almost like they're completely like they're going bad, they're actually very nice inside and they still stay firm, unlike bananas. And as they start to get darker and darker, they get mushier and almost inedible. But plantains are just the opposite. When they're green, they actually have almost kind of a woody texture to them. And when we do those, we actually make plantain chips and plantain chips are sliced and then they're fried and then salted. That's how we do it in the United States. And then once they become really ripe, they're sliced and they are fried in a pan. My wife often sprinkles sugar and serves them with sour cream. That's just how she likes to eat them. So they do have two applications, and they taste different as they ripen. Coconut meat contains less sugar and more protein than apples, bananas, and oranges. Obviously, we can do so many different things with coconut. Fresh coconut and coconut milk are used in many applications. We also have coconut that is flaked and sweetened, and we use that for many applications. And let's just see if I can, it is actually a drupe also. Let's see here, it's also a good source of iron, phosphorus, and zinc. 90% of the fat in coconut is saturated. So you learned in nutrition between saturated and unsaturated fats. Young coconut are used for coconut water, which is sweet and aerated, whereas the meat of the young coconut is gelatinous, that is called coconut jelly. Coconut are used in desserts, salads, soups, and sauces, so there's all different applications for coconut. And even though coconut oil is saturated, they feel like that's a better oil, a better fat than some other types of fats, such as fats that are from animal fats, or oils from animal fats. Kiwi fruit has a bright green flesh with a white core surrounded by hundreds of tiny black seeds. So we remove that flesh. Actually, I have a process for actually taking a spoon where we cut off each side, and then we just take a sharp spoon and run it around, keeping the spoon just under the skin of the kiwi, and then we can pull the kiwi out relatively easy. Kiwis are one of those things that take a lot of time to actually prep, and so they're not used all that much because they take so much time to prep, but sometimes they add a nice color to different fruit salads and dishes. Obviously, everybody's seen a pineapple, and they actually grow on like little shrub type bushes that grow to about 3 feet tall. One of the things that they have an actual core to them that we have to take that core out before we can serve it. And then the top of the fruit is called a crown. The pineapples actually take a long time to mature, so you might not know that they actually take 18 to 20 months to fully mature. And they must be fully ripe when harvested because they will not ripen after harvesting. So one of the things that you should know about some fruits is some fruits like bananas are picked a lot of times green, so that by the time they get to the market, they're actually ripened in yellow. But pineapple actually has to be picked when it's fully ripe. It cannot be ripened as it travels. It just actually gets older, but it doesn't actually ripen once it's off the bush. So once it stops growing, it doesn't ripen any longer, and so you have to be careful about that. Okay. So the process for actually coring a pineapple. So I want you to take a look at that process. You can practice with that in doing following those procedures. Also have papayas, and obviously papayas in the United States often are very small, but as you get into Central America, you can get much larger papayas rather. They all have seeds in them. The peppery seeds are edible, and they resemble peppercorns. We don't usually use the seeds in the United States, but they are edible. Actually, I have figs, and figs are fresh, but they're also dried. Most of the time, you're going to find them dried in the United States, just because fresh figs are very delicate and they don't hold up or transport very well. Occasionally, you can get fresh figs. Um, you actually can also get a fig that um, is preserved in a way that kind of keeps its fresh qualities. And so they still look like fresh figs, but they've actually been preserved in a way that allows them to hold for a much longer period of time. Actually, you have pomegranates and prickly pears. Um, they both contain edible seeds, although I will say that the pomegranate seeds are very hard to eat, so most people don't eat them. They actually juice them. They take the seeds out, so they are technically edible. But what we usually do is we take the seeds, which are in clusters in the pomegranate, and then we actually use them for juice and make pomegranate juice. And so that's the purpose behind that. Let me see if I have a few notes on prickly pears. I don't actually buy prickly pears hardly. They're not very very popular. Sweet and juicy seeds are used in salads, soup, sauces, and beverages. That's for the pomegranate. And they didn't really have much information on prickly pears. I don't know a lot about prickly pears. You might have to seek out a little bit more information about prickly pears, but they're not very popular here in the United States, harder to find. You'll find them more in border states such as New Mexico and California and possibly Texas, but they're a little bit harder to find. Then we have guavas. You guys are probably familiar with guavas because they're very popular in tropical areas. They make a lot of jams and jellies and chutneys. We can't really usually find fresh guava, but there's also a guava juice, which is very nice. And so guavas and guava juice is often blended into tropical fruit drinks. And then guavas are used in jams, jellies, and chutneys as well. A persimmon is similar in shape to a tomato, and it's a bright orange tropical fruit that grows on a tree. Ripe persimmons are very sweet. Unripe persimmons are tannic in flavor and have a chalky aftertaste. Persimmons grow on trees that are native to China. They are a winter fruit that remains on the tree even after the leaves have fallen. Persimmons are at peak of season from October through January. Persimmons are eaten raw or baked into breads, cakes, and desserts. Then we have a process for dicing mango. Some of you might be obviously familiar with how to do that. What we actually do is we cut around this very long kind of the seed that's in there, and then and that's after we take off the skin. So we take off the skin, and then we slice around this long seed, and then we dice it. So that's how we usually do mangoes. You guys are very fortunate a lot of times because you can get much larger mangoes in Central and South America than what we have here available in the United States usually. We also have a star fruit. It's an exotic fruit, shaped like a star when cut, perpendicular to the stem. Very crisp and juicy. It's kind of tart and acidic to somewhat sweet. Star fruit is ripe when the tips of the star begin to turn brown. Star fruit may be added to salads or used as a garnish. So a lot of times we use that just because it's kind of a unique type of fruit and very pretty as it's being presented. I also have dragon fruit. Dragon fruit we can buy here in the United States, but it's usually often in Asian markets. And so we actually have to go to special Asian markets to actually find dragon fruit. Um, and it's an exotic fruit. It's actually of the cactus plant. It's it has an inedible pink skin, black seeds. Flesh is mildly sweet and similar in texture to kiwi fruit. Flesh makes an interesting addition to a tropical fruit salad and can be juiced or blended into beverages. So it's actually a cactus. Mangosteens. I'm not familiar with this one. You might be familiar with these. I don't. It's not something that is available in our area. It's about the size of an orange. Has a hard, thick, dark purple rind that is inedible. Underneath the hard rind is an inedible red membrane that encloses a juicy cream-colored flesh. The sweet tart flesh is segmented similar to a tangerine. Mangosteens must be ripe before being harvested as they spoil quickly. This prized fruit from Asia is eaten raw. So again, this is something that is probably only available in the local areas, in certain areas of Asia, because of the fact that it spoils so quickly. We also have lychees and rambutans. Now, rambutans aren't very familiar, are not often purchased in this area. Lychees a little bit more familiar, and so we can get those. So lychee is an exotic fruit covered with a thin red inedible shell. It has a light pink to white flesh that is refreshingly juicy and sweet. The lychee also contains an inedible seed. Lychees are native to China and are grown on evergreen trees that can reach heights of 50 to 60 feet and bear an average of 300 pounds of fruit annually. Lychees must be harvested ripe as they do not continue to ripen after being harvested. With the shell and seed removed, lychees can be eaten raw or in salads and desserts. Lychees and rambutans are exotic fruits with similar flesh surrounding a single inedible seed. So that is lychees and rambutans. Durian is an exotic fruit that contains several pods of sweet yellow flesh and has a custard-like texture. Durians are about the size of a large cantaloupe, have a thick, thorny skin that is golden to green in color, and can weigh up to 10 pounds. That I didn't know. This Malaysian fruit is known for having a strong, unpleasant odor, but a very appealing taste. So a lot of people don't like the odor, and that kind of makes it where people don't want to eat it because it has kind of a strange odor to it. We also have passion fruit. For us, we juice passion fruits. They're hard to find fresh. Passion fruit is small, oval, shaped exotic fruit that is typically weighs 2 to 3 ounces and has a firm, inedible skin that can be either yellow or purple. As the fruit ripens, the skin becomes thinner and wrinkles. The orange, yellow, or pink-green pulp of the passion fruit is sweet and juicy with a gelatin-like texture and a citrus flavor. Its small black seeds are edible. Passion fruit may be used in jams, jellies, ice creams, and a variety of desserts, but again, we also juice it as well. Flesh of breadfruit is cooked and used much like a potato and has a flavor similar to fresh bread. It's native to Polynesia, has a bumpy green skin, white starchy flesh. It's about the size of a small cantaloupe. When unripe, the flesh is cooked and used much like a potato and has a flavor similar to fresh bread. As the fruit ripens, the flesh becomes softer and slightly sweeter and can be filled with butter and brown sugar and roasted. We have kiwanos. The kiwanos, also known as horn melons, have a brilliant lime green flesh with a cucumber-like seed and a tart, refreshing kiwi cucumber flavor. And let's see here. They're native to Africa. The flesh is a brilliant lime green. Kiwano melons can be cut in half lengthwise and eaten right out of the rind or sliced and added to fruit plates. The flesh can be strained to make a tangy sweet sauce, salad dressing, or a refreshing beverage. I don't know that we have kiwanos in the United States or something that's easy to find in the United States. Again, probably a transportation issue. So they're probably native to their area in parts of Africa. And we have kumquats. We do find kumquats in the United States, not always popular, but a kumquat is a small golden oval-shaped fruit with a thin, sweet, and tart center. Kumquat is similar in appearance to small citrus fruit, but is eaten peel and all. Kumquats are available from November to April. Kumquats are used to make jellies, marmalades, and chutneys. They're also attractive garnish, especially when displayed with their leaves. And finally, we have a thing called jackfruit. Jackfruit is an enormous, spiny, oval, exotic fruit with yellow flesh that tastes like a banana and has seeds that can be boiled or roasted and then eaten. Jackfruit is the largest tree-borne fruit in the world. A jackfruit can weigh up to 100 pounds and be up to 36 inches long, approximately 20 inches in diameter. There are 100 to 500 edible seeds in a single jackfruit. Immature jackfruit is similar to texture to chicken, making it a vegetarian substitute known as vegetable meat. The flesh can be eaten raw or preserved in syrup. Like pineapple, jackfruit is a multiple fruit derived from the convergence of many individual flowers and a fleshy stem axis. So kind of grows like a pineapple, but is on actually a tree. Very large. We don't, again, it's hard to find jackfruit, but because they are so big and difficult to transport. Well, that's all that I have for fruit. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Please get out and explore some of the different fruits that are available in your area. Experiment with them. Take some time to maybe make some chutneys or some jams or jellies with your fruits. Juice them. Learn how to taste them. Learn different ones that maybe you haven't tried before. So do a lot of experimentation with your different fruits, and I will see you next week. Again, the quiz is located on the in Canvas under quizzes, and so just click on quiz and you will be able to see the quiz. You'll be able to use this video as well as the PowerPoint presentation that is in the file section of your Canvas to be able to answer a lot of the questions. Thank you, and I look forward to giving you another presentation, excuse me, next week. Take care.